So, does Trump's proclaimed deal of the century stand a chance? To discuss this, we're joined by Matthew Brodsky, who's advised the White House on Jared Kushner's peace plan. He's also a senior fellow at the Security Studies Group. Matthew Brodsky, his father-in-law, no doubt, raised the bar considerably when he said that Kushner would actually end up delivering the deal of the century. Kushner himself is much more low-key. He's been talking about an in-depth operational document. From what you know, what are we likely to get? The world's best deal ever? Or just a very long document?
I'm certain if you were to ask them, they would say that setting something up as the deal of the century is probably not the best way to manage expectations. However, I think what they've done is they've assimilated a lot of what has happened before, really figured out the lessons from before, and have put together a peace proposal, parameters, that addresses both the political side and, of course, the economic side, which they view as equally important.
But we don't know very much about the political side. What we know from the horse's own mouth is that the focus will be on security for the Israelis and economic aid and development for the Palestinians. That really does sound like it's going to fall far short from Palestinians' political aspirations, isn't it?
I think what they're looking to do is to basically make sure that the Palestinian future is brighter, safer, and better, and provide a pathway forward for them, which they have not had for decades, especially. And I think that's the main thing that they've been driving after, is that solutions are easier to come by if there is hope, and the hope needs to be pretty much manufactured with a plan, a peace plan that's put together, because those who have been saying that the status quo is not sustainable seem to keep saying that we're spinning our wheels in the same manner. And so
sure, but isn't that exactly what Jared Kushner intends to do? He is throwing statehood aside. He says, you know, states, the notion of a state means different things to each side. That's what he himself said very specifically, that we decided that we were not going to talk about statehood, so we won't deal with the issue of states. So he is essentially throwing away what every US president in recent memory has been talking about, which is two states for the Palestinians and the Israelis living side by side in peace and security.
Since George W. Bush.
And if that doesn't exist, what is the key selling point then of this plan?
A better future for the Palestinians that would, at that point, essentially be far better than any that are currently within the region.
So throwing billions of dollars at the Palestinians and wishing the problem away without looking at the issue of occupation and how to end occupation, or even looking at the issue of settlements, which we know Jared Kushner has a very close relationship with the whole settlement community. He himself is co-director of his family's foundation. We know between the years 2011-2013 donated tens of thousands of dollars to settlements. So what kind of concessions are we likely to get from the Israelis?
See, I think you are focusing perhaps a bit much on the terminology of the statehood aspect, when they've also been quite clear that they are going to be addressing the 5 core issues that are, that are there. And that, of course, is security, that's Jerusalem, that's borders, and more. Okay, so these are all things that are going to be in the plan. That's what they have said.
Well, you and I don't know. I imagine you're not privy to the details of the plan, though you've advised Kushner loosely. What do you know of the plan that we don't?
First of all, many people have advised them. They've actually done a really good job of seeking out the advice of people who have been practicing in this realm before, specifically during the previous peace processes, and with others. And they've assimilated all of that, and they figured out that if what has been tried now in 3 main efforts that the U.S. has led that culminated in offers for statehood, that if those haven't worked, now is the time to actually try something a little bit different.
But are we trying something different? Is he trying something different when, since 1993, since the Oslo Accord, this whole notion of aid and quote-unquote charity, financial aid to Palestinians, it's what's been tried and tested. It hasn't achieved peace. So a lot of people are taking a very skeptical, not to say cynical, view of this.
Right, I think that we need to give the plan a chance. Obviously, people are very deeply invested in this as an issue. Everyone has an opinion on it. And in this media environment, especially in the United States, where it's fairly toxic, a lot of people tend to root for failure. And I think that's unfortunate. I think perhaps we should wait for the plan to actually come out, so then we know what's in the plan, and then we can look for ways to constructively engage and what's in there.
Pro-Israel voices here in Washington are actually urging President Trump to kill this plan before it even sees the light of day. They say it is not in America's best interest and it would simply embolden Netanyahu. Don't they have a point?
I don't think they have a point. And one could, of course, quibble on exactly how pro-Israel some of those groups are, in fact.
Well,
however,
the director of the Washington Institute for Near East Policy is one, Robert Satloff. He's been urging President Trump to actually do away with this deal, to not even bother with it, to shelve it before it even becomes an official plan.
I think that what he argues is, unfortunately, to keep the status quo as it is, essentially to preserve that as the edifice for which a future statehood would come about. I think what this administration is doing...
This is someone who's just recently interviewed Jared Kushner, in fact, just a few days ago, on this peace plan that most of us still don't know the details of. He says he believes it will set off a chain of dangerous events in the region, which many would argue would simply add to Trump's previous decisions on Jerusalem and the Golan, which haven't been necessarily in the best interest of the region.
I would hardly say that the decision on Jerusalem or on the Golan Heights has actually led to a major outcry within the region. I think, in fact, President Trump, with those decisions, kind of helped dispel some of the mythology around that. And of course, as they've said, having a peace plan, it needs to be based on realism. And what that is recognizing, of course, that Jerusalem does have a very strong connection to Jews, and that it's been the capital of Jews in ancient times. And of course, it has been the capital of Israel since its founding.
And as you well know, East Jerusalem, under international law, is supposed to remain that, a divided city, with East Jerusalem being the capital of a future Palestinian state, while West Jerusalem would be the capital of Israel. Matthew Brodsky, thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure.